So Andrew, can you tell us a little bit more about Epstein, the play, and your role in it?
Well, it's a play that we did about 18 months ago in Liverpool as part of the 50th anniversary of the Beatles' first single, and now 18 months on, we're doing it in London, in the West End, in a year that's full of Brian Epstein. It's full of tributes, and it's quite fitting that we're opening in this year of his 80th birthday, in a year that he's been inaugurated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think he'd be very pleased that he's got a play opening in the West End. And so, for the second time in my life, I'm playing him.
Okay.
And when we first performed it in Liverpool on the first and last night, we were all kind of convinced somewhere down the line we'd be doing it again. So he's never really gone too far away.
Yeah.
You know, I've sort of kept him in my drawer, for want of a better phrase. So it's a challenge, and it's nicely daunting. Okay. It's quite hard to talk about sort of playing him while we're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Because once you start, this is a guy who had a hand in changing the world, truly.
Sure.
And I've said many times that he was worthy of a play, even if he hadn't discovered the Beatles.
Yeah.
You know, one scene that we've been looking at recently is worthy of a whole play. You know, he had so much going on in his short life. He was a man of charisma and character and angels and demons. You know, and so as an actor, it's a joy and a thrill, and you know, as well as an honour. But it's a wonderful play. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And everybody who's been to see it, you know, seem to have gone on that journey with us.
Okay. And you're obviously a massive fan of the Beatles. What kind of, obviously you've mentioned a lot of things there, but what attracted you to this part particularly? Was it just because you were fascinated with him?
It was just the writing. You know, I thought it might just be another one of those Beatle plays. Okay. You know, and it's just so much more. It is a play about the Beatles, but it's about society at the time. It's about changes in the law. It's about it's about a window into a man who Paul McCartney described him as the fifth Beatle. Yeah. And I think when a Beatle says who the fifth Beatle is, there's a bit of a clue there. But I didn't expect this to open so many windows. I thought I knew quite a bit about Brian Epstein, but I didn't know this much. And he was a man who shone. Yeah. And you know, it was I couldn't resist it.
You said he'd just been inaugurated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah. Where is that?
Well, it's all over the universe, man.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. I think it was in Washington, was it?
Right.
Or was it Memphis?
Okay. It's just that listeners will be wanting to know, whether it's somewhere in Liverpool.
It was about time, really.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
he was the forerunner of everything that followed. I mean, Brian did all this on his own. You know, from an office in Liverpool, from a telephone.
And not many people will know that. Back
well,
then,
there was no internet, there was no Twitter, there was no red button voting, there was nothing like that at all. There was no downloads. This was pieces of plastic and telephones.
So amazing for the time then.
Incomprehensible. His genius matches the Beatles' musical genius. You know, and he was hammering on doors for months, for years, really. Once he'd seen them, he knew he had to take them out there. I mean, the question I get all the time is, you know, would it have happened without Brian? Yes, but it would have happened differently.
Yeah.
You know, I like to think that musical genius would have been found at some point, but he was the one who actually went, okay, he was the one who put the money where his mouth was.
Probably a bit of a Cowell of his day then.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love Simon Cowell to see this, and I think he would, as everybody in the business would have a huge amount of respect for him. You know, people say, and there's parts of the play where we kind of look into what may be described as his failings, but no one had done it before. The Beatles had never toured before, you know. But this is coming on the back of a guy who had a crazy journey before he found them when he was about 26 years old. He'd lived a life. Most of us live in a lifetime before he was 20.
The story is huge.
Yeah, absolutely huge, and it's very clever that the play opens those windows, as I say, without But hopefully nothing's lost. We see him as a little boy. We see him as on perhaps his last night. And so it's a journey, and when the Beatles aren't too far away, you can't go too far wrong, I think.
Yeah. So this is a play for you, and our actors get asked this all the time. We get asked this all the time. Do you have a preference between theatre and television? Or film?
Well, I haven't really done any films, but I spent 10 years on telly, solid, without any time off at all. And after I'd finished Coronation Street, I wanted to do a play, and there was a couple around. I was very fortunate. I had a few choices, And so I was just determined to do something different, and the part had to be something very different to what I'd been doing. And Brian's very different to anything I've ever done before. And so it's always about the part for me. I had 7 years in the bill with a great character. I had 18 months on Corrie with a fantastic character, hard character, horrible character, but a good one. And now I've got this dream of a part. You know, this is a man who had a hand in changing history, a guy who's connected to the Beatles, in a premiere. It doesn't get much better than this, really. It doesn't get much harder than this either, I have to say. So.